to Bodhisattvas in the practice. We talked about it last time, and then
그러니까 보리심을 키워 나가는 것이 여섯 바람일
the developing Bodhisattva is the paramita.
드렸던 것 같고 그러니까 이제 보리심을 발했는데 참선만
We have aspired for Bodhisattva, but if we only do the meditation, then the Bodhisattva will not grow. So we have to aspire for Bodhisattva, and we have to practice the 6 paramitas, and that should become the basis. And meditating is a part of it amongst the 6. You have to know that, and if you only do one of the 6, well, that's an error. That's the wrong thought. You should look at the actual property of voidness and enter into samadhi. So what is samadhi here? When the heart arises, in reality, the property that doesn't change. If you think that if there's something that doesn't change exists, well, most of the people do. For example, in ancient time, the glass is blue in its natural color. Well, just like we thought so, in our heart, amongst many different heart that arises, we believe that there's something called I which doesn't change, and I who doesn't change. I have to know and I have to say, we thought it is so, but well, because of that, those people who believe in Hinduism and Hindu practitioners, even if they meditate deeply, they say they have actually found the Jina, which is also the Atman, which has the property that lasts forever. So even people like Maharishi, they say so. The Jina refers to the true self, the Atman. But what is samatha? In Buddhism, the samatha is the mind does not have its own form, and even in mind, just like how everything else in this world exists, they do not have the property that's eternal, and because of that, when we know that theory very deeply, then whether it's a meditation or the key phrase of concentration, or through the meditation, if we concentrate, from the state that you have the concentration, the very different mindset has arose. You know that they are just merely shadows. And because of that, in the paramita, when we say well, even the line in the Paramita Sutra, Ranya Paramita Sutra, written that the material reaction and also the sense of reliance and also the thought and dependence, things that happens afterwards, a lot of many different activities that happens like Araman, but the phenomenon that we talk about, even the thing that we know, in reality, it's not that there's something that exists later and we know it, but we know, it's just that we know that we know. So when you say the sabotage is being cultivated, you have to listen carefully, and
또 이해를 못해가 또
you
딴소리하고 또
shouldn't
딴소리하고
say
그러지
because
말고
you shouldn't say wrong
자세히
things
들었어야 돼.
because you don't
그래서 이제
understand, but you have to listen
사마타가
carefully.
이루어지는
When you
것은
say the
이루어지는
sabotage has
원리가
been
어떤
cultivated,
것이냐?
oh,
특정한
prepare.
마음의
It means
대상에
that
그 의지처의
to an
마음의
object
대상에
of your
의지하게
mind,
집중을 하게
you
만든다.
you're
그러니까 그
you
마음의
are
대상에
made to
집중하게
dependent on
하는
or to
이
rely on the
것이
object of your
어떤
mind.
것이냐?
So what is it?
어떤 것이냐?
So for
이를테면
example,
부처님께서는
Buddha
호흡에
uh,
집중을 하게 했다.
make the
그러니까
concentration to
호흡이라는
the
특징이
breathing.
어떤 특징을
And
갖고
what
있느냐
property
하면
does it have, the breathing?
에, 죽을 때까지는
It's something that
반복하니까
we repeat until
죽을
we die,
때까지는 안 할 수
and
없이
we have to
반복을
repeat
하니까
it until we die.
시기에
So we do not
관찰하니까 딴
rest,
데로
and it does not
가버리더라는
lead
거예요.
us to any other place.
집중하기가 참
And so it
좋은
is something that's very good
마음이
to concentrate
호흡에
at. And
의지해서 집중하는 방식이
it's a
참
very good thing. It's a
좋은 것
very
같아요.
good
그건 아직
method
이
for the
비자금이
mind
있어.
to rely
호흡을
on the
조절을
breathing
하려고
and
이게 자율심이기
concentrate.
때문에
But if you
됩니다.
try to control the breathing, because
이게
it's a
조절이
free
되는
senses,
것이
it's
아니고
very
조절이
difficult
되어
to
있어서는 안 되죠.
control,
스스로 그냥
and you will have side effects. So because
자율적으로
this
되는
is
거예요. 스스로
automatic, you should not
자율적으로
try to
되는 것이기
control
때문에
it.
만약에 이걸 갖다 이제 내가 이 얘기를 여러 번
I have said
반복해서
this
했는데
repeatedly.
이 조유 만약에 요걸 갖다 조절하는 지금 뭐 이렇게 일반 무슨 다른 그 명상하는 데서는 자꾸
In many different
호흡,
meditation
호흡, 호흡
centers, they
그래가지고
say the
조절을
method of breathing,
하려고
and they
하는데
try to
그
control
조절에
it.
잘못된
But
상황이
if
그 억지로
if you
조절될
try
때는
to
자율의
control it
신경계가 교란이
on your
일어나요.
own,
그러니까
firstly, then there
신경이
could be
교란이
some
일어나서
problem with
나중에는
your
진짜
autonomic nervous system,
그
and
수습이
it could
불가능할
also happen
정도로
that you're not
문제가
able to
생겨버리는 경우가 있기
control
때문에
it
이
later
요거는
and have
이
problems.
호흡을
So in
조절하는 법이
Buddhism,
없습니다.
there is no method
자꾸
for controlling the
나와서 이것도
breathing,
하면 뭐 호흡을
but
갖다가 어떻게
a lot of people
춤을
they say you
추시고
have to
옥수를
breathe
내쉬고
in for
자꾸
5 seconds
이런
and breathe
소리를
out for
해서
5 seconds,
그거는
but that is
맞지 않습니다.
incorrect.
맞지 않아요. 그래서 이제 요는 뭐냐면
So
이게
what is the
사마타라는 것은
important thing here?
마음을
The essence here
이
is
안에서 일어났던 실체가
there is
없이
no actual form to something that has arose in your
업의 흙
heart,
때문에
and
그러니까
because of
업이라는
karma,
것도
and even the
나를
karma,
중심으로서 일어난 이
the
욕망적 사유 때문에
the sense of
나의
greed that has
생각
arose
때문에
because of
내가
your
나한테 이익이
concentration to
될까
myself,
해가 될까 이익이
whether
될까
it's
해가
going to
될까
benefit me
수없이
or it's going to harm me.
생각을
We think
한다는
about
거죠.
it
그
countlessly,
수없이
and
생각하는 것이
because of the countless
나타나면
thoughts,
이게
the thoughts
하루에도
that
수천
conflict so
번만
many
번을
times,
왔다 갔다
more
한다는
than
거죠.
thousand times, sometimes even
수천
to
번을 왔다
a
갔다
million times a day.
이것이 뭐
And
안에
inside, if there's
실체가
something in
있어서 하는
between,
것이 아니기 때문에
well, there isn't
이
anything inside, but
마음을 하나
you just
일으켜서
raise a heart, and
여기에 호흡에 집중을 하게끔 딱 집중을
if you
하면
concentrate your heart
집중이
at
되고 그
something,
마음의 의지처럼
well, it becomes
이 소리처럼 그런다.
some point where you can depend on.
집중을
And
하면
if you
집중으로
concentrate and
전하다
if you
보면
increase
다른
the
것이
intensity of
희미해지겠죠. 그죠?
concentration,
다른
then the others
수많이
will become a little
일어났던 주변에
less
여러 가지
concrete.
조건들이
The many
그
different things that
희미해진다.
you rely on,
그러면 이제
they will
조금 더
become a
희미해지고
little
조금 더 희미해지고 나중에
haze, and if they
어느
become a
시점이
little
되어지면
uh, less clear,
좀 이제
and at some point of time,
수주신 가운데
amongst the
7주, 8주를 넘어가면 이게 거의
if you pass out the
집중도
seventh or
30%
eighth state of
정도
Bodhisattva, then the concentration level will be attained about 80 to 90%. And if you cross the level, then
다른 것들이 8, 90% 정도
then it will become a state where many different thoughts will disappear 80 to 90%. So many different thoughts. Even nowadays, we rely on relying on other thoughts or our body or even the senses or even the things that has aroused our senses like the music or arts. While living dependent on those many other things, we believe that that's us or myself, but there's something that can disappear at some point of time, and most of us live our life relying on them.
그러니까 이제 그 안에 왔다 갔다 하는 이 마음을
And so
갖다가
inside the heart that
사라지게
conflicts,
만드는 집중하는
you have
방식이
to meditate
사마타
and
사마타라고 하는데요.
make them disappear, and that method is samatha. And what do you understand by disappear? It's just that the agony was not there in the first time, but we just understand that they are vague, and we also understand that the moment that they disappear, everything had been a lie. All the thoughts that I thought of and had attachment for, and also was persuading myself that I have to live in that life in that way, we understand that they were just mere shadows. So we experience the voidness of our mind. So relying on the mind, the thing that Buddha said was only the breathing, the breath, and as it comes later, the form of Buddha, the appearance of Buddha, you have it in front of you, just like how you make an imagery. I heard that it's been developed in Russia or somewhere, that although there's nothing, there you can see the imagery, and just like that, in your heart, whether it's Avalokitesvara or Buddha, you have it in front of you with your imagination, and the more concentration that you have, the Avalokitesvara becomes clearer. And before it happens, it's just like if there's water, and just like you have thrown a pebble into the water, it just comes for a short and disappears, and also loses its shape. But if you look at it with concentration, then you can see the image as it is. And so if you're able to concentrate deeply in the samatha, and if you pass the first stage of dhyana, then you can see the sign or the form of the bodhisattva. And in such a deep concentration and also samadhi, you need to be in deep samadhi to see them, or else even if you see the form of a bodhisattva, we cannot even believe so, and we don't even realize. So you have to make a place where your mind depends on, and the mind doesn't depend on anywhere else but at the actual object. Whether it's the mantra or the key phrase meditation, or the meditation or breath, by concentrating here and by practicing how to concentrate here, when the concentration strengthens, then again and again, the so many different hearts that we thought of, they are actually void and they do not have the form, and we start feeling that feeling is truth. And samatha is not the cure for all the disease or for all the agony, but it's actually cure for the hurt. So with the samatha, if you ask if we can follow the laws or the restrictions, but with samatha it is not possible. Maybe we can make a relation, but it doesn't happen completely or absolutely. So even if you have practiced samatha in depth and have entered into samadhi, but if you don't have the proper perception, or if you have a perception that is wrong, then from the samatha you have a wrong thoughts, and if you don't know them clearly, then just by tasting a little bit of samatha, you would assume that you have learned everything. So you have to enter into samadhi looking at the actual property of voidness. So the things that which we thought it was I, and also that I exist, and the voidness about I, we have to know clearly, and that is samatha. So inside the mind, the conflicts inside the mind, they disappear, and just like filling the utensil with the water, just like making a hole in the porcelain and it becomes a porcelain with a hole. Everything they start going away, and it's not that the porcelain is filled, but you understand that the porcelain is actually empty. Samatha is something like this. So through mantra, it's also possible. So I tell you again and again, but I get such question all the time. Maybe we should stop looking at the sutras but start with the practice. But this is actual practice and you begin everything like this. But if you ignore all of them and just want to start with the practice, it is not so. So even reciting the mantra, if you know the method how to do it properly, then with the mantra you can also enter Samantha. So whether it's what kind of mantra it is, on top of it, if you concentrate your mind and if you have one thought, then the theory, the theory is that by having one thought, the agony disappears. So it all happens. And also, even when you meditate, you can also meditate on the flower. But in Buddhism, they tell you not to do so because if you do that, then if you imagine Buddha, then you have greater feelings for Buddha. But if you meditate on flower, then instead of Buddha, you have the flower sitting here. So samatha is possible, but the next step is not possible. That's why only with the theory of samatha, if you're talking about, that's also okay to do it with a flower. You understand? Because samatha is so powerful, sitting down with crossed legs is not practice. And if you think so, that is a great mistake. If you don't do it with other things, then even though samatha is difficult to achieve, you have to know that. So Buddha said things which are related to this, like pre-practice, so that you can do it all together. And that's the fastest way. So looking at the actual property of the voidness, you have to enter into samadhi. So look at this, have the proper perception and you have samatha. And when we say the samatha is cultivated, it means inside the mind, the distracting thoughts, they disappear. And that's almost like a water without any wave, and just like it, very clear and very tranquil, and it can reflect anything that's going on outside. So at the state when there is no wave in my heart, and if we look at other opponent or object, then just like in a very clear water, you can see the reflection of the tree roots just like that, without any obstruction or curves. You see everything as they are. It's being reflected, but are you looking at it just the reflection? If the question is asked, then, but if you have the proper perception, then through the proper perception, you are able to observe. You can see it with the proper perception. So in reality, if samatha is not cultivated and if you don't have the proper perception due to distracting thought, when you look at other things, everything you're looking at with your greed and also your anger, and that's why you're not able to take them as they are, but you take it with your greediness, something like, oh, that looks nice, should I take it? When you say that you want to take that flower which is nice, that already means that you have grown your attachment. And distinguishing the flower and taking out the good ones, that means you're taking it out of your own greed. If your karma becomes so, then it is not that you are looking at it from the clear state of samatha, isn't it? then the proper perception, if you don't have the proper perception about Buddha's speech, or if you don't have the sense of discrimination about wisdom, then if you look at the good flower through samatha, it means we have just looked at the flower. If we have seen the car, it means we have just seen the car. Then to those what situation happens, looking at the object through the analysis, they cannot talk with the proper perception. Then there is no pranya, and that way it becomes not very full of wisdom. So Buddha has repeatedly talked about them. So you have to enter into samadhi looking at the actual property of voidness. The first practitioner has to prepare the condition to cultivate samatha. So while practicing the samatha, you have the conditions. It is not something unconditional. So in Korea, we do not have the sense of discrimination even to the teachers, but we do everything as how we like. It's written in the books, and someone said that, and someone from the Western countries said, and I could understand. But just because you could understand easily doesn't mean it's a truth or it's a force. But in reality, there are many things about the truth which are difficult to understand. So there has to be a condition. To practice samatha, you need to have the previously required requirements, or else it's not like samatha practice something so gentle, and you can just get whatever you require. But if you do not have the preparation, then there's a high chance of you failing. And that's why the things that they normally say in the common world, like about practice or the practice of heart, they say when they did that, it was good for their health and their breathing became comfortable. But they are just satisfied with that kind of extent. You feel at the most comfortable, you have the most comfortable breathing when you're sleeping. If you're not snoring, you are very comfortable. If you want to live your life for the sole purpose of having a comfortable breathing, then you can. It's best that you sleep, but that is not the purpose of our life. And that's why the preparation stage, what you require for the first you need to have the straight perception of Buddha's teachings. And also, samatha is actually a law of practice. So the things that we say in an official way is something that if everyone listens and understands, that's more than enough. But the actual practice method, that's something that you have to learn from your teacher directly. And if you don't follow that method, just because I have said it here, there are so many parts that I didn't say. It's same as the tantra. There's a part that they don't say in the official place because there is always a difference. So if you just say out in a straight manner, then some people can be victims, and so it has to be customized. It has to be a customized teaching. Everyone has different karmas. Some people have very greedy karmas, and some people have a low rationality, and they're very sensuous and emotional, and some are very irritated. And the irritated people, if you ask them to do the meditation, then they would be very annoyed. They'll be more irritated, and it shouldn't happen so. And so that's why those parts you have to keep teaching, and the irritation part, you have to give them a method to counter hold it, and you have to teach them the actual practice method. And the things you need to have first is that you need to have the previously proper conception, and regardless it's Mahayana or Hinayana, having the long culture, we're not talking about this who has just entered. Like, for example, Sri Lanka is about 2,400 years. Myanmar, they have Buddhism from the time of Buddha, but they again got from Sri Lanka, and the Thailand, Laos, and also in the northern part, Tibet, Nepal, Sikkim, Taiwan, Bhutan, those Buddhist countries, the teaching which is always consistent. And here the common thing is they tell you how to distinguish. Average about 15 to 20 years. About, it's not like they teach an hour in a week, but from 5 to, if more than 9 to 10 hours a day, they teach 15 to 20 years, so that monks can have the proper perception, so that they do not have the wrong perception. And so most of the disciples in the common world, in the lay world, they do meditation, and the reason why they fail is because they do not have such a proper perception. That's the first reason. And even if they claim to do it, it just looks like they're doing it in an outer experience, outer appearance, but it's not. The practice is not done actually, and they dye their hair and they put starch and they walk around in a very good clothing, and they comb their hair, oil it, and the appearance, it doesn't have any meaning at all. But the thing that they need to have inside is the sense of discrimination. They should be able to distinguish what is wrong and right. I asked the person who is teaching the method to go back to farming, and I asked him, what do you teach first? And they said they teach the psychological preparation first. For what reason are you coming back to the farm? And when they say you should, I'm tired of living in the city, so I'm thinking of farming. But you should not think of it such easily. Farming is more difficult than becoming a doctor. Farming is very, very difficult. As Dr. Shin, it's more difficult than going to medical college. He would have failed. It's not easy. Just because other people do it, well, let's talk about it in an opposite way. A doctor, if he says that, oh, well, it's easy to do farming, I can also say, I can operate. Shall I? Well, it's not easy. It's not okay. It takes them more than 10 years, even if they are putting everything they have to farming, and it takes about 10 years to identify the seeds. They need to identify what kind of seed that is. And if you say it is the seed of barley, then everyone thinks it's a barley, but even the barley has so many different kinds.
이를테면 IR 667 수원 21호 22호
Well,
23호
if they number it like this is 1, 21, 22, 23, can you identify? Depending on the region, they have so many different
다
seats.
구분되냐고 이게. 이거는 구분됐대요?
Were you able to identify before? Are you able to identify lettuce and the radish now? Well, it's about 20 years, so I believe you are able to identify the lettuce and
근데 아직 가시하고
but I don't think you can identify
뭘안 돼하고.
different types of
가시하고
lettuce.
배추지는 뭐냐?
Well, it's very difficult. Then you should bite it. If you bite it,
가시는 이게
uh,
자체도 같잖아요.
if you bite it, you can taste the difference.
씨도 톡 쏘아. 한 서너 개를 톡 씹어봐. 그러면 가시는 톡 쏘고 배추 씨는 싱거워. 네? 그톡 쏘니까 이게 가짜는 게 그러잖아요. 채소도 같지 않은 게.
Well, even if it's a small one, the loop mustard, if you bite it, just because it's mustard, it has a mustard taste. So you can identify it. So they make you distinguish the seeds first, just like the farmers do so.
농부가 그렇게 하듯이
When you're learning the Buddhist teaching, you need to know if this is a teaching of Buddha or if it's not. Even when you're praying for virtue, you call it Buddhist teaching.
발음이 똑같아서 그러나. 요 불자고 요
Well,
불자고 달라.
here although they have the same pronunciation, there are two different words. This one is the one that you are wearing the handcuffs, and the other one is gaining enlightenment.
이 발음이
It's just the same pronunciation, but they're actually different.
한국식 발음이 그래서 그렇지. 달라 완전히 달라. 그러니까 이게 비법인지 정법인지를 구분을
And so, if you're not able to identify if that's a proper teaching or if that's the sideway teaching, then that's also not okay.
쥐약을 먹어도 병원에서 먹어도
Then you can also claim that even if you are eating the poison, if you eat that in the hospital, then you can also get enlightenment. Well, this is not so, because this is not a matter of time or place. This is just like a math formula. This is just like a math formula about the Buddhist teaching. And here, the Buddhist teaching, the Buddhist law, the Buddhist doctrine is almost like the practicing method. And although you know, and you need to know this properly and in an accurate manner, and then you need to go into practice.
누가 와서
If someone comes and say you can get enlightenment in an instant, then you can also ask the person, is there a chance that you can have the Father and the Son at the same time?
아버지와 아들이 말이요.
Well, the Father and the Son, they can be in the same space, but from a body, is it possible to have the Father and the Son together? And if you say you get enlightenment right in an instant, that means there is no cause and effect, and also this is something that's not possible. Isn't that so? Even if you do it fast, even amongst the seed that grows most rapidly is radish.
그래서 공명이 옛날에
And so,
전쟁을 나오면 제일 먼저 뿌리는 게 무시야. 먹을 게 이제 식량 확보를 해서 무시를 잔뜩 갖고 와서 그냥
so Zeke, when he first went for the
이틀 만에
for the war, the first thing that he saw was radish, because it grows fast. So you can also take that you can also eat the vegetable. And even the fastest seed that grows, it takes about 4 days for it to have its sprouts.
심어놨는데 바로 움켜가지고 물을 바로
You cannot seed it, and you cannot put the seed and want to eat soon.
열심히 빨리 해서
Well, it's okay to say you try your best and you get enlightenment soon. Well, that's okay because if you walk fast and you reach fast, but there are also cases when you are not able to reach the place at the desired time. So it's not necessary that even if you are walking fast, you get there soon. Like some people, when they had their knee surgery, they cannot walk fast. So uh, everything everything has to be together with the law of cause and the relation. Everything has to be there in preparation. And the other thing that has to be there is when you're doing the meditation practice, uh, well, it's okay that you practice at home a little in an appropriate manner. Here, the practice is uh, because it's something that you cut down the agony inside your heart. So just like you have to take care of your son, and if you have to take care of your grandson too, then if you're sitting there for a day, then just like just like fishing, one will be fished out of you and the second one also. So in the southern east area, if you say you go to samatha practice, then you become a monk or nun and you cut down all the relation that you have with the world. And then only just like your relations are being cut, everything gets off, and you need to go there alone and you need to sit down. Then only it's possible to do it. You even when you do the meditation or the practice, even when you're reciting the Avalokitesvara, you think about different things that is happening with your life. Avalokitesvara, and why am I remembering my grandchild? And after some time, you think, I have to go home and prepare dinner for my husband. You have to go to market. I have to buy this, and is there garlic this time? I have to make the fish sauce. In that kind of distraction, well, the meditation refers to cutting down all the distractions, and you organize deep inside your heart. And so even if you are reciting Avalokitesvara religiously and you have settled down a little, but then you think, but if your son's family had some argument, if they want divorce, then everything gets messed up and your eyes are all bloodshot and you think about what to do. It's not easy. So the meditation that you do, it means you need to do a little practice at home. And while doing so, if your surrounding conditions provide you an opportunity that you can cut down everything and do it, it means you should try. Well, I'm not sure, but you'll be able to do it. But again and again, having all the conditions that troubles you, you just go far, just like you go deep into the mountain. It's not okay. The fishing rod is so long. If you go far, it becomes it flexes almost, but it catches you in the end. Nowadays, you have the mobile phone and you have many different things that connect you, and so you can have the connection right away. And if you want to cut it off, it's so difficult that, well, when I saw the program, I am a nature person, nature man. When I see it, I can see that that person was going through so much difficulty, and some people, because it hurts so much while living in this common world, in the lay world, the person tried to cut it off, and so he just wandered around the mountain in order to cut everything off. And if something gets a little settled, then you again start seeing. If it settles a little more, then you can also see the same thing in the moon.
머리가 무거우면 이리만 보면 더덕이 보이고 머리가 이제 가벼워지면 요리 보이니까 이제 다리가 보여.
You can see it everywhere. Well, if your head becomes a little light, you start seeing the mountain, you start seeing the sky because you start lifting up your head. But it doesn't have any meaning. If
끌고 나가버린 거야. 핵 끌고
if
나가.
the if the relation in the labor drags you, then you are again dragged off. And then if you have the disease that kept catching you up, then you also fear that, well, I think I'm going to die in this manner, and you are not able to live in the mountain.
죽음의 인연이 탁 이제 죽음의
And if the shadow of death comes around it in the corner of the mountain, as with the sunset,
태그름판처럼 이게
when it starts setting down, then because of the fear, you wonder what should I do, and you tremble in the fear. You claim to love the mountain. No, it's not so. Well, those conditions, they do not provide you the practice.
그래서 나는 전부 다 40대면 이혼합시다.
Well, maybe that's why as I'm thinking of asking people to get divorced about 40s or 50s and enter into their practice. Then the monasteries, we can provide the rooms, and we can provide them the place for practice. I think that would be good.
여러분 노년 문제가 해결이
Then you don't have to worry about your aging.
여러분들은 밥에 주는 문제도 해결이
You don't have to worry about preparing food, and even your husband, they don't have to look how you feel when you prepare them food. And just like India, you can go to your practice, but whatever it is, you can just think that it's a previous practice before doing Samantha. And when you enter deep into Samantha, then the surrounding conditions, surrounding relations, if you still maintain them, then you are bound to have distractions. So it's not okay. If you say, well, when I'm trying to do this, then as much as I have the hurt to try to do it, it's almost like the gambler.
영화를 보니까 이 전문가 타짜는 탁
The expert, the gambler, they know what cards they have, the opponent, and so
상대한테 굿땡 정도 줘. 상대한테 굿땡 정도 딱 주고서 지는 뭐지? 뭐
they also give them a chance to believe that they also have the good card,
아까 보세요.
but
받은 사람이
they still have the card that can win.
그죠? 그 지는
So they're just like one step higher, and
탁 있다가 저쪽에서 돈을 왕창 걸게끔 굿땡 줘가지고 왕창 걸게만 하고
they make them pay a lot, and they win with their card.
그러니까 꼭 여러분들
So even you, when you want to start practicing, then someone who is or something that distracts you, which is at a higher level, just one step higher, not even 2 steps.
도구 마성이라고 돌을 갖다 한 9쯤도 닦으면 10이라는 게 꼭 마장이 같이 와서 마장이 훨씬 세.
You know, there are also times when you're actually doing the practice.
웃긴다고 마장하고 친구를 하고 살면 말이야.
There's,
마장이 잘 봐준다고. 그리고
you know, there are some times when you're friends with
얼마나 야비한지 몰라. 이렇게 놀자
the
그러고
disturbances. Then it's just like our girlfriend. They say. They said, let's go for a drink, but when you're actually sick and hospitalized hospital, they don't even come and see you at the hospital. So when you actually do something, those disturbances, when you want to go to the teaching, then
화요일날 여수대학에서 교양 강좌가
well, then you say, oh, I had something happening on Tuesday, and it's morning, and So yeah, I understand, but
그게 전부 다 이제
everyone is being
쫓는 거야. 왜
fooled. Why
쫓느냐고.
are they being fooled? Because
그
of the
업의
relation of the
운명이
karma. Because
업이
of the karma
거기에
reflects to
반응하고
it,
내가
and
거기에 가야
the
되겠다고
moment
자꾸
they
오는 것은
starts to
지 업의
work,
고리 때문에
that
가는
says
것이지 그가
uh,
그걸 하기
you
때문에
need to
가는
go
것은
there
아니야.
because of your karma, but
딱
it's
그게
not
반응을
because
하게
you
돼.
have to go there, but it's the reaction of your karma to that. And so
그러니까
because of
죽고
that,
살아서 공부를
if you
해야 되겠다고
feel that, oh, I have to
내뱉고 났으면
study with
딱
my
떨어져.
life and death, then everything falls off.
딱 떨어져. 혹시 또 이게 또 존경하는 것
Well, I'm scared
영감님들
that your
그러면
husband
할머니 얼굴
might
담고 다
be
떨쳐버리면 어쩔
watching
거라고.
this, and if they say you're going to study, and so if they let you go, then
예? 이건데 그것도 나이가 70 이렇게 넘어가면
well, if they
다
are after
마음만 이렇게
70s, then
그렇지.
even if you
실제
ask them
가서도
to
뭐
go,
지도
they
가는
cannot
길
go, and
가도
even
되고
they are not in the
또
position to go, and even the
앞으로
others,
그저
and even your husband,
상황별로 시간
after 70s, where would they
시간이
go?
있다고 다 마음이
It's just that they would
마음을 먹고
leave
산다고.
their heart at peace
나 같으면
and
다른 집에
stay.
가서 뭐 한
And
달
even
많이
when they
있다가
go, they would just go to their daughter's place and stay there for a month or a month and a half.
전화 왔습니다. 그래서 조금
So the
명상하는 것은
meditation,
내가 필요 이상의 어떤
if you have a
의심스러운 것을
little,
갖고 있다.
if you have emotions, that's more than required. And if you are being tracked and
익숙한 애착 관계가 강하게 있는 것들이
And if the things that has a serious relation with you drags you around, that's not okay. And they have to stop and be cut it off.
정멸이라 그런 것이니까 그런 것을 이제 여러분이 잘 그 예비로 내가 지금 할 수 있는 조건이 되나 그래 이제 집에서 이제 하는데 그건 이제
You have to keep practicing them at home to cut them off, and then you will have the great aspiration, and you might be able to achieve Stanka or Araka at next life. So we're asking you to do the practice, but doesn't mean you have to misunderstand that you have achieved everything. Where it's not okay. It's not okay to believe that you have cut them off. It's just that the tree is standing still because there's no wind. You have to see how the tree shakes with the wind. It's not easy.
그다음에 이제
And also, you need to be a little lucky. As per the common law, if you are very unlucky, then your behavior and your thoughts they all become very narrow, and even your body becomes sick, and even you're not even able to meet easily. Also, you need to be a little clever. If you shouldn't be having low IQ like me, you need to be a little clever.
머리가 나빠가지고
Because you're not intelligent enough, even if we tell you 40 times, 50 times, if you're repeating the same thing,
야그
and even no matter how many times he asks you, do not go by the well, you ask why. And even when we tell you, do not go by the well again, you ask why. So even financially, if you're not well off, it's not okay. Even your health wise, if you are sick again and again,
계속 아파서 하면 그걸 이제 근기가 강한 사람은 다른 복이 있고
well, those people who are very healthy, if you have a very strong,
강하면 보조국사도 많이
if you
아팠지만
are very strong in your health, well, even when
근데 보통 사람은 그렇게 안 돼. 그래서 복이 좀 많은 것이 적은 것보다는 좋아. 그 많은데 또 짜증나가지고
even when the whatever Jinok, even though he was very sick, he was able to gain enlightenment. So, but it's also not okay if they are in too much abundance. If you are too healthy and if you are too wealthy, you don't feel you don't think of studying, but from the point of view of studying, you should not be too unlucky. Here, when you are if you are too less of everything, it is also an obstacle to study. So
금약하게 쓰고 또
you know
남을 위해서
you
베풀고 그러면
and if you
성취를
contribute
하면
to other, if you
그런
offer to
거를 또
others, and if
많은
you also do things to others,
그렇게 되지.
then it also provides you the door to your own studies.
예. 그거는 이제 그 얘기할 거 없고 그거는 전생에
Where
공부를
there's no
어마어마하게
need
하고
to
있잖아.
talk about it because he studied a
전생에
lot
다
before
하나님이
in his
직전에
previous life. He was
돌아가셨다가 이
born,
생에
he
태어나서
died
이 생에서는 그걸
before
안
gaining
배워도
enlightenment,
이
right
생에
before
이렇게
gaining
태어나서 그럴 수
enlightenment. So
없어.
even
나는
when he didn't
이
study in
생에서는
this
그걸 안
life,
배웠다는 것은 그걸 안 배워도
because
이
of his
능력도 안에
strength,
이게
divinity, it's
그걸
not matter
배우고
of
안 배우고 이거
study or
문제가
not,
아니고
but because
전생에
of his
그런 것을
virtues from
다
his previous life,
통해서
and
능력이
because of
그대로
his
얇아져서
agony was so
자동차
less, it's just
그냥으로
like as thin as a sheet of paper,
남은 상태에서
and he died in
태어났으니까
that
이
way,
생에
and he was
태어나서
born into this life.
얇은
And the
넓적한
thin layer of paper, it
한강의 구절
it got torn away after listening to a stanza of
온
Diamond
생을
Sutra.
갖다가
He
공부를
studied a
했어.
lot,
스님도 참
and
아니지.
even Buddha studied for so many lives.
그러니까 육조 해능을 갖다 육조 해능이 그분이 태어나서 한생
Do
공부를
not
전부
take
오지 말라고.
his case as a reference
본인은
because
육조가
you are
아니니까.
not him.
예? 본인들이
You
육조만큼
should not
된다고 착각을 하나?
misunderstand or assume that you can do as much as they do. Well, it's all the same
공부
person, but
수행력에
in the
있어서는
power
달라.
of the study, they're all
내가
different.
저번에 법회 가서
Last time when I went to the teaching and I told him about the story of Jinok,
보조국사 얘기가 송강사라는 데가 있는데 보조국사께서
when the Venerable Jinok passed away, about 15 days before, he was not well, so he said, "I'm going to go off and call all the disciples." Well, nowadays we have a phone. Before they had to make their own way to call them. So all his 700 disciples, they arrived, and the place that they talk, it's just like the Chinese way of the teaching sitting. It's not like they speak on the mic, but when he talks, then his disciples speaks in a higher voice. So the 700 people that were sitting in the teaching room, and he did his last final teaching. If I go, there will be no place for you to ask questions. And he said,
그 아마 물을 곳이 없을 것이라고. 그러니까 보조국사 뒤에 보조국사가 인가한 겐츠가
and so I believe when Venerable Jinok passed away, there was no reincarnation or someone who was taking on his part. So they asked so many different questions, about more than 100 questions, and Venerable Jinok answered all the answers, and he sat down. But even his chin didn't lower down, and he said, "Do not touch my corpse for a week." And so he just stayed still, a little slanted to the back, and even his mustache started growing. And even when they did not light the incense in the monastery, the whole place was filled with scent, the whole mountain. And when I spoke about this story, that there was a monk about in Korea about 800 years ago, and there was a great saint, and the old monks said he's of a different level than us. So with them and us, we have a different level. They are the heavy level, and we are just the fly level. I'm not sure if we are even at the bottom. we cannot match ourselves to them. Even Buddha, he is of a different level from us. Well, often people say everyone can become Buddha, but that means only under the circumstance if you practice for a long time. But even without doing it, if you say you and I are the same person with two eyes, it's not okay. That's a great mistake. And so, first, you also need to be a little lucky in the level, and with the prior preparation. After that, you need to follow all the restrictions or the Buddhist doctrines, the 10 precepts, and also the 5 precepts after receiving them. And the monks, after becoming monk, we need to follow whatever is required of us. And it also plays a very important role in achieving our goal. Quite a lot, right? So when do we see the sutras and when do we follow what we are required to do? So the things that we do, even accumulating virtue, we have to continue doing them without resting, so that we are not born of unluck in next life. If you are born in the Somalia, then we don't have any way. We have to try the dance or we have to just earn our bread. Before, when they said Africa, because we saw so many sick people, starving, and also sick, and also drying the cow dungs. If you're born in Somalia and if you're just drying the cow dung, then there's no time for you even to meet the Buddhist doctrines. And so, afterwards, what's also more important in acquiring our proper mind is having the sense of Bodhisattva. So for saving the souls of all sentient beings, I'm going to sacrifice my life. And so you need to have interest in becoming Buddha. So So before dhyana, we also have the four paramitas and the four virtues. If you remember, we need to do that. Do you remember Ngong Kecho here when he came and he played the music? He was a monk before, and even him, he also got Keishi degree, and he also studied all the scriptures, and he also went into the cave and did his own practice for 3 years. But in 3 years, he felt unconscious and went to hospital, and he was diagnosed with lung tuberculosis. And and so for 6 months, he had to be under medication, and he had to take care so that he could get well. And all this time, it reminded him of one thing. It is not something that I can complete in one life as I thought. Without any virtues or merits I've accumulated, if I try to achieve it in one life, it's almost like a thief. And so we should not be stuck in the disease of enlightenment. And although we have the final goal, which is there, it's important for us to consistently try. It's important that we continue trying, and it is not uh, it is not okay to believe that you will just try to achieve it no matter whatever is the means or the consequence. Did we do one line or two lines? Well, when I look at the time, we did about an hour, but we only did 2 hours. Therefore, if the yoga practitioner tries to achieve samatha, then the all Vinaya sutra and verse, they are they are following the true form, and so they are also remaining in the true form. And you also have to make sure that the mind stays in the true form. There's no need even to talk about those 12 songs, but here the whole thing talks about the complete Koreana Tripicata. The complete Koreana Tripicata is a daring to explain about things to end your agony. Well, listen to it. But then, how are they asking you not to study sutras and study?
전라도 말로 싸가지 없는 것들 하더라.
The saying that you should not look at the sutras, that doesn't mean what they are telling you. But when you're when you're about the stage of identifying the agony, do not follow what is there, but you need to show the basic background by showing the true form. So do not rely on the samatha or the concept, but it doesn't mean someone who doesn't have any idea about it can achieve it. So you should not talk about something that doesn't make sense at all. Like without looking at the stress, you can get enlightenment. That is not true. So all the sutras are the speeches that he made in order to cut down the agony. So even when you listen to it while doing the meditation, you need to have the thought that you're studying further. And because you try to understand it in the form of the wrong knowledge, it happens the obstacles. But if you understand it from the true form, then if you listen to it, even when you're doing the meditation, it gives you a more strong sense of encouragement. Well, even the monks that I met in Tibet, my neighbor who was in the cave, he went down to listen to Dalai Lama's teaching of the way to Bodhisattva. I couldn't go because I was in another practice. And I asked the old monk, you already know it by heart, and you're reciting every day. And I asked him, why do you want to listen to it again? But he said, even. But he said, although he has listened to it hundreds of times, but each time that he listened to it, he hears something new. That means he's actually studying. Those people who say that I have already heard it once, what's the point of hearing to it again? That means that person is not studying. Since the agony in their mind, if you're able to hear it, that means the agony in your mind has cut down a little and your horizon has expanded to a certain extent. And therefore, those people, they have to, and therefore, those people who are able to say that, it means they're studying very hard. And I told him I have a great respect to him. What is Venerable Jinok going to talk this time? He's going to do Dhamma Sutra. Well, I heard it's last time. And then there has to be a tale. This person doesn't study at all. That's the conclusion. And so listening to the teaching, listening to Buddha's words, and practicing on your own, the asceticism practice, they do not match. it's just that when you're doing your own asceticism practice, you should not understand it in the formal concept. And for this, we say you should not have the sense of discrimination. So has been led in the true form and also includes the things that will lead in the true form. You need to have your mind close to it. It refers to 12 classification of sutra, and so what is it that I'm doing wrong, and what is the word that I'm saying wrong? Well, we also have something like this. Even when you're doing the samatha practice, to where you need to have the discrimination is, even when you're doing the meditation, you need onto the stage that only if you're able to cross the eighth level, it's okay. The first, you need to have the mind. First, you need to have the mind because you need to understand what's wrong and right, and also you need to understand if you're hearing the right and wrong. And after 6th or 7th stage, you're since the slumber is coming to you at a certain level, so until you pass off the 7th level, you don't understand that you don't understand if that's a distraction. So until you reach the 8th level, you need this in order to get back to where you have been standing. It's spoken in Lamlim. So until the 7th stage, you need because from the 8th level, it can happen to you automatically because you do not have any more sense of discrimination or distraction. So also the slumber doesn't come to you, so you can do it from the time. So you do not require from the time. So saying that you do not really require the sense of discrimination, even when you start the samatha, that's also wrong. If you don't know what stage you are in, you should not do on your own. But from the point of time, if you're not aware because it's not clear, then you need to ask your teacher. If you don't ask, also it's not okay. If you view this from the final part of the analysis, the teachings of the Buddha, whether direct or indirect, they are all related to true form, the enlightenment. So whatever Buddha has spoken about, the motivation for it is to get you to nirvana. Whether he spoke about you not being angry. Are you going to India? You say yes. All the contents that leads you to enlightenment. Other than that, Buddha has not spoken about anything else. Everything is in order to erase the agony. And because of the suffering of all sentient beings from agony, Buddha has given so many different prescriptions. And whenever he met different people, he has given the prescription that this pain you cure in this way, and this agony is from here, and this kind of habit has been the cause of your suffering. And so, with what method and how you need to cure your pain.
동의수세본을 쓴
이재만 who wrote 동의 수선
기존적으로 가지고 있었던
보건.
한의학을 가지고서 극복이 안 되는 병이 너무
There are so many diseases that cannot be cured with the Korean traditional medicinal book, 동의보감. And so before that, although they studied about disease, but it was only in fact giving them the existing prescription. But Dr. Lee, he started analyzing the body of body. Of course, he did not
해보아까지 않았지만도 분석을 그래서 체질학을 갖다 이제 이 사람이 얘기를 했어.
he spoke about the different
네 가지 모양의 체질이 있다.
nature of the body, but he did not study the anatomy. But he did not do the anatomy, but he studied the nature of people, and he knew that we all belong to one race. And if we divide it in a big manner, we have four different nature. And after analyzing it on his own,
그러면 태양은 기질적으로는 심리적으로는 어떤 상태이고 또 장기는 어떤 상태이고 그런 것을 갖다 전부 다 해서 이제 약을 갖다
the 태양인 his psychological or body form is that way, and so you have to use this kind of medicine. And the things that has been passed down from 동의보감 is quite different, and it's a new and it's a special manner. And while he moved around, he didn't open a clinic at one place, but he traveled to different places. And whenever there was a disease, or well, if you say nowadays, he's a teacher who moved around, and with the medicine that he could acquire from that place, he cured most of the disease. And so he found a medicine where there is a disease, and through his daily habit, he enabled so that they could cure the disease. And what is nature of you? What is your body type? So 태음인, they have a lower level of blood in the bottom part, and so they have little bad digestion. So when you see the 태양인, they have a very straight shoulder, but they, and also since they have and since they are not very strong enough, they also have suffering from the respiratory system, and so they do a lot, and also they're very stubborn. When they sleep, even when they sleep, even if someone takes them off, they don't even know that they're being taken away from one room to another. But they have a very good memory. They don't belong to literature, but they belong to engineering sector. And so for them, the society is where the area that they have not yet understood. They don't try to understand. They're not really interested. They just wonder, why is that person doing that? And they just leave it. And to those people, when Dr. Lee went and said, you belong to this type, and so the first thing that we have to do is to cure heal the stomach, so that they can have a good digestion. And then, although they don't digest well, they have to eat something that's nutritious. And normally they are warm food. And also the stomach, in order to in order to digest. Say you should not eat cold food, and even when you sleep, you should not sleep leaving your stomach cold. You need to keep your stomach warm. Those things are daily habits, and on top of that, what kind of medicine that you have to eat. And since the common people in olden times they could not eat expensive medicines, you have to eat these kind of herbs. And even amongst the food, you have to keep your body warm and help it helps to digest. And the kind of food that you have to eat are those. And in this manner, he tried to cure a lot of disease. Even Buddha, the disease of karma, the sickness of karma, in order to cure, you have to follow this kind of practice method. Because you're suffering from this kind of sickness, and Buddha has taught us how to cut down this kind of sickness. And if you do this kind of action, this kind of suffering follows. And about the time frame, well, we know that, right? If you smoke like 20 cigarettes a day, then about 50 to 55, you have 25% higher level of or higher possibility of having the lung cancer than we can estimate. Likewise, depending on the disease, they give the medication. And so Buddha has taught about all the methods to free ourselves from suffering. Other than that, Buddha has not spoken about anything else. Whatever he spoke of, even the farming, well, if it only ends with the word farming, it's just a petty talk. But even you, well, the cloth was very cheap in this place. If this conversation ended that way, it was just a petty talk. But even when you spoke about the cloth shop, the the cloth there is expensive, so it's not good to live a very humble life. And when I did not buy the clothes, and instead I tried to help someone who is going through difficulty, then well, we are planting the seed of virtue. But if you only talk about some normal like hair colors or hair perms, well, other than going to the hair salon, and with that money, if you try to help someone who's going through a difficult time, then well, you're actually processing towards a good or kind form. But if someone talks about hair parlor, and well, it's more than enough just to wash your hair clean and tie it neatly, and it doesn't interfere with us going around. Well, our mothers in olden time, they never cut their hair throughout their life, and they never permed their hair too. But they lived a very good life and passed away, and even Shim Sang-dan, she never cut her hair. What's the use of cutting it? And with the money that you can spend on cutting it, you can help others. If you think about it that way, then well, actually you're processing the direction you're heading is to the way. Even when you're selling those apartments, where the apartment is expensive, it's good to buy and keep them. And but if that's what you're doing, then it's very you're just a petty person. But if you say the apartment is a very good place to practice, to our aestheticism practice, and there's a very wide living room, and so if you can recite mantras there and study, it will be great. Then if that's the thought behind you, then even when you buy the apartment, you are actually accumulating merit. But with a good apartment, you just spend it as nothing but just somewhere you sleep, and you spend millions of Korean won there just to sleep there. But what is that for? Can't we use it in a
자기
better
복을
way?
낼까? 그렇게 복을 감하는
You continue doing things that
일을
cuts
갖다
down
감하지 말고
your
좀
marriage.
못하는 일인 줄 알겠다. 복을 감하는 일을 갖다 해서 될까?
So first, whatever you do,
하더라도
again and again,
자꾸
you have to
실행하는
direct
쪽으로
it to the path that you are doing as the season
실행하는 쪽으로
practice.
태양이 되도록 자꾸 만들어내야 돼.
Even in middle of doing a small conversation or whatever it is, even when you're talking with your husband,
얘기하다가 올해 여름에
where shall we go this summer?
그냥 간포 해수욕장
Just
갑시다.
go to
가서 그냥
the beach
텐트
and we
하나
could rent
소고기도 실컷 구워 먹고
a place and
그거는 농민들
just
가면
grill some meat. Well, that's something that
가서 템플 스테이
just
하면
some people do. But instead, you could say, let's go for a temple stay and we could pray for a few days. But what do? You do not try to do that, but instead, you say, oh, I just follow whatever my husband makes the plan. You call your husband a husband. We call the wife the wife. We call husband and wife, right?
편이라는 것은 조각편이야. 그러니까 반 조각이니까
And also, since there are two of you, there's also a part of you that can say what's your opinion. So you can say, let's go to monastery and we can study a little and we can also pay our greetings. Do with that. Well, that's better than just going to the beach and having a beer and grill some other beings meat and come back. Well, it's way better than that. Otherwise, we can go somewhere and do some voluntary work and help others. Human beings should live that way and change. But if you try to enjoy everything out of your desire, even the sutras that deals with the voidness and also suffering, clearly they are eventually and finally dealing with the enlightenment. Everything in this life is void and everything does not have a form and everything comes and goes with the relations. And why is he explaining everything so much? That's because in order to cut down all the agony, and they are the prior explanations for it. Although the main entity and individual entity, such as those two different characteristics, those kind of level of the voidness are being dealt with, when you study them clearly or carefully, it's actually leading us to the minute area of voidness, which the Buddha has shown us when he was chanting the second wheel of his teaching.
두 번째 보면 여기 이제 불의에 관한 얘기죠, 그죠? 유마의 불의 본문을 갖다 유마경을 설하실 때 불의 본문에 그 둘이 아니다.
So Buddha has, when he was chanting his Dharma chakra, when he was chanting the second Dharma chakra,
둘이 아니다 그러면
he says it's not two. Well, it doesn't mean there's one.
하나는 뜻은 아니에요. 둘이 아니다.
You and I are not two.
너와 나는 하나다.
Well, if you say
그렇게 되지, 그지? 둘이 아니다. 너와 나는 둘이 아니다. 그러니까 둘이 아니다는 말은
well, not two, but one is actually two different words. The Buddha and the lay people, they are not two, and they misunderstand. That's why they keep saying it's one. But when we say they are not two, means they are all related and they all have the relation. So when I say the goodness and evil are not two, Well, if you say are they one, then there is a logical contradiction.
하나냐 이렇게 되잖아요, 그죠? 선과 악은
They are
둘이
not
아니다.
two.
왜
Why
둘이
is it
아니냐?
so?
이 설명을 정확하게 해야 돼. 둘이 아니라는 것은 악
Well,
때문에
because of the
선이
evil,
발생한
the
것이거든.
goodness arose.
악을 없애기
In
위해서
order to
악을
get rid of
벗어나려면
the
어떻게
evil,
쓰냐?
how do you have to? What do you have to do?
악을 벗어나려 그러면 악을 써도 안 돼. 그러니까 선이
You need to
있어야
have goodness to escape the evil.
탈출을 하죠, 그죠? 악은 악을 써도 안 벗어납니다. 악을 쓰면 쓸수록 더 악해져요.
Whereas, but in Buddha's second will, he taught about the emptiness of things and about the about and positive absolute in negative terms, which is the doctrine of emptiness. So even though evil and goodness they exist all together, so even there's also an end. So when you have a disease, when you eat the medicine, it's end to the disease. But if the disease has not yet been cured, and if you stop the medication, then the disease is going to occur again. So because it's not two,
둘이 아니기 때문에 악을
when there is evil, the goodness is being portrayed out, and there is a means of contracting it with the goodness. And when the evil disappears, even the goodness disappears. Well, they exist on their own, but you see that the root is actually one. So they are actually two. When I explain about the dependent arising in this manner, you need to explain about this, but you should not understand like since they are not two, they are one.
잘못 번역하면
Well, many people who give teaching nowadays, they say since they are not two, they are one, but it's not actually so. They are not one and they are also not two. We did not say they are two.
뿌리는 아이 참.
The speeches about truth is not easy. But on the other hand,
그러나 이 불의본문 유마일 소문경을 중심으로 해서 부처님께서 불의본문을 얘기하실 때 그거는 사실상 공성이라고
when Buddha spoke about the doctrine of emptiness, although he did not say it's empty, when he said it's not one and it's not also two, that's already explaining the lower level of voidness.
공성의 낮은 단계 공성을 이미 설명을.
And then the teachings about paramita followed, which is the essence of voidness.
내용의 얘기가 이제 되기 시작하거든.
Let's do until here today.
내가 뭐 한 가지 좀 요 본문에서 좀
I have something to ask.
여쭤보려고. 그쪽에 그
In Nepal,
ES라는데 그 네팔에
where there was earthquake,
지진 난데 그 대웅전이 이제 대웅전은
I think it's a dormitory and also the main temple, and there are about 1,000 monks there. In the main teaching room,
모시게 되어서
it broke off, and so they are not able to use it. And with that, I would like to help a village there.
그래서 이제 예? 대웅전 그쪽에 하는 데는 그냥 1인 1구자당 해서
To the main temple, about the main temple, one person about $100, and to help the school and also the village about $50.
되는 마을이 있고 학교가
And the school is only about like 2-3 buildings,
그래서
so just building a school there. That's what I hope to do, both of them simultaneously.
그래서 이제
And so
한 5만 20만
it's about $50 to $100. Will that money be okay for you?
아니 나는 그렇게 안 하고 예?
The amount is good enough. It's appropriate.
처음에는
Well, first I thought one person $1 million each.
끌라 그랬는데
But the more I thought
생각해보면
about it, it
자꾸
got
값이 내려서
discounted,
이게
and I
막
was a
만
little
원
worried
되는
that it could go
아니까
down as low as $10.
그 1인 1구자 그래서 에, 이제 그렇게 한 건 이제 어쩔 수 모르겠지만은도 그저 낭중에서 거기에 그 법당을 복구하는 데는 전부 다 그냥 한
To
1억
restore the
7천만
whole
정도
main temple,
들어갈 것
I
같습니다.
think it's going to be about
정리가 다 됐으면 좋겠다. 이제 이 생각을
a
갖고 있는데 이제
million
그
to
사진
million
봐서
and a half Korean won.
그래서 이제
But
그
looking
뭐
at the
남은 나라라도
circumstances, I think we
그
should
스님이
proceed.
아주 훌륭하고
And although it's a
세계
different country, the teacher,
8만
the
4천
monk over
수도라
there is a
통달시키라
great
그래서
teacher.
그 티베트 장경과 세계 장경을 갖다 전부 다 영어로 번역하는
And they
통역
develop
사역을
and they
키워내고
teach translators
그
who
스님이
translate the
기초로 해서
different
그
scriptures. And
학위를
also
가진
there are
학자들이
so many
수양학과까지 합해서
students,
한
even including
180명
the
정도가 이미 돼서 100년
Western
프로젝트를 하라는
translators,
거예요.
Western experts.
그래서
And I thought it would be great if we could help
도와줬으면
them.
좋겠다 이제 그런 생각을 갖고 있고 그게
And
100년간
and they are
지속되는
proceeding
프로젝트를
with a
하겠습니다.
project that's about 100 years old.
나는
Well,
티베트 장경을
even to
번역하는데
translate
40년 걸렸는데
the Tibetan
그거는
scripture, I
더
thought about
지속되는
40
사람들이
years.
100년
But
하겠다고
over there, they have
그것도
about
가만
people who
생각해보면
are
중요한
willing to
게
sacrifice 100 years.
그
Well, the
림보체
interesting thing about there
선생님께서
is
선생님께서
the Rinpoche
일생에
there.
허다하고 죽으면 다음 생에
I
아무것도
think he
하고
thinks that if he
그런다고
is not able to complete in this life, he will come back in his next life and complete it.
뭐 100년 잡고서
When we
이거
went to
우리 학교
Ajanta,
설명하니까 그 설명하는 가이드가
the guide
요
explained
법당은요
this teaching room
그
is
스님이 그 아잔타 석굴에 이게 이 석굴이 어떻게 되냐면 3층에 이게 거기에다가 이제 굴을 뚫어서 큰 바위 그 쫙 바위가 그
where it's
내려가서
built on a
있어요.
cliff,
그
and
바위에
on the
그
cliff,
이게
on the rocks,
굴을 뚫어서 이제
they made the
법당을 만드는
cave.
거예요. 그 회랑을
They
다
carved.
만들고
Well,
그래서 그런데 뚫린 구멍이 저
the
앞에
carved
이
door
넓이보다 더
entrance
커.
is bigger than
깊이가
bigger than this, and even the depth
그
is about 10 times deeper than here.
그걸 참도 저거로 퉁탕퉁탕 쪼아서 내는데 기둥이고 뭐고 이런 것을 갖다
And even the pillars and everything, it's not like they brought it from outside, but while they were carving, well, it's just one stone, including the statue. But how did they do it? The whole life they would do it, carve and they die. And when they die,
그러면 이제 죽을 때
all the instruments, they would just keep it there, and they die, keeping their instruments or equipments there, their tools. And I believe while they're doing that, while carving, they were able to do their sabata. And so when I'm going to come back, about 40 to 50 years, and about 10 years old boy comes back again and takes down the tools and does it again. And building that one cave took about many different lives.
청정신도 전에도 여 석전사 일을 했을 거야. 그지? 안 했나? 예? 예. 다음에도 저 양반이 또 할 거라. 그리고 이제 그 낭중에서
And even the Rinpoche in the monastery, since it's 100 years project, spent about 20 years in this life, and after death, since he's going to do it again in his next life, just leave it here and do whatever you wish to do, and then the young boy will come back at this young age and complete. So what I think is, even though Dongguk University, the translation, now about 30-40 years, but maybe we should take about 100 years in planning. Then about 2 to 3 different lives. Well, when you see like person like Kim Il-sung, you cannot say he was being reborn, but whatever it is, this monk even
영어권에
to
있는
Western people,
사람들에게
the
지금
or the
말씀드린
English-speaking nations,
모든
he's
대상들을
trying
다
to translate different
보여주겠다고
scriptures for
해서
all of them.
거기 가서
And
이렇게
so I thought it'd be great if we could go there
어떤
and
그런
also
어려움을 처했을 때 이제 실제
also pay our
그런 일을
respects.
좀
And when they
도와주고
are in their own
그 제자를 좀
difficulty, we could help so
이끌어갔다가
that they would
빨리 좀
be
할 수
able
있도록
to proceed with their
좀
translation. And I thought
여러
about this
생각해 봐도
often,
그
and
얘기가
I think that's befitting,
적당한 것
and I
같아서
have decided to do
그렇게
so.
하기로 했습니다.
But
그러나 이제 내가
this is up
이거는
to
내가
my own
판단하는
discretion.
문제인데
But
그쪽에 그냥 아무 흔적 없이
if we are going to help them
도와주겠다.
without
안 그러면
any kind of
대한민국 지역에서
memento
여기에
left there,
아,
or
대한민국의 석정사의 보살택이들이라는
or do you
일종의
want to write it there that is rebuilt by Republic of Korea,
뭐 하려고
Seokcha
대충
Monastery?
보니까 뭐
Do you
하려고
want to
뭐
do
하려고
that? What do you think?
그럼 그거는 쓰지 말고 여러분이 쓰지 말라고
If the
경매하는 사람이
if the
쓰지 말라
sponsor
그러면
says do
안 쓸
not
거고
write it, they're not going to write.
나는 안 쓰는 것이 정말
I will be very happy
정말
if
좋거든.
we don't write anything.
그죠? 이제 하요법회 정도는 그럴 건데 또 그렇지 않은 사람들은 법회를 안 보는 사람들은 거기야 뭐죠.
Well,
이름 적어도 말게 뭐야.
how they would know even if we write or not. But
그럼 그거는
let's not write our names, okay?
합시다. 그래서 그 안에 불상
I'll ask if you can also do the statue there
5천 정도 이렇게 했을 때 안에
with the
불상까지
amount we
보실 수가
plan.
있는지
I think it's going to be a little
아니면
difficult.
법당만 될 거예요. 그렇게 이제 해드리는 것으로 그렇게 여러분께서
I hope you would also
바랍니다.
do your best. Let's end today's teaching here.